Okay, welcome. This is the second lecture in Unit 10 for the Art Appreciation class. This is a lecture on graphic design. And so I have a couple of things I want to cover in this graphic design lecture. Number one, just kind of explain the nature of what is graphic design, and talk a little bit about how important graphic design is as a field, and then we're going to just kind of go through a number of famous graphic designers and look at their work. So most of the lecture part will actually be right at the beginning of the slideshow, and a lot of the later part of the slideshow will mostly just be looking at pictures. So first of all, I want to say, as it mentions at the beginning, graphic design is the invisible art, and what I mean by that is that graphic design is meant to not be noticed. When graphic design is doing its job well, most people don't even notice that it's there doing the job. Graphic design, I often explain to students, is a lot like film score composing. The composer who writes for movies, the purpose of their film score is to not be noticed. As much as possible, they want it to heighten the movie, heighten the emotional experience of the movie without the viewer really thinking I am being manipulated and that my experience is being heightened. Similarly, graphic design is often working on us. It's manipulating us. It's trying to convince us of certain things, trying to sell us of certain things. And when it's working really well, we shouldn't be all that aware that it is working very well. Graphic design, another point I would make is that it's has, compared to most of the other art forms, it is biased towards clarity, and therefore it's also biased towards economy. The idea of trying to do it as cleanly and as simply as possible is kind of runs through almost all the graphic design that we're going to be looking at today. Not all, but almost all. And then my last major point that I want to make about graphic design in general is that you could think about the overall core skills of a graphic designer as one part is being about making the design of a logo, especially the logo mark, right? That's kind of this fundamental unit, being able to think about how to create a thing, a reductive, simplified thing that communicates an idea, that sums up, let's say, the identity of a company, or sums up some other type of very basic communication visually, and it does it succinctly and cleanly and clearly, and with as minimal excess as possible. And then the other aspect that's kind of the core of graphic design would be typography, awareness of type, and not just in terms of choosing typefaces, but the spacing, the scaling, the page placement of type, how all of that works together, is critical for the job of a graphic designer. Okay, so if you remember our lecture from last unit about illustration, I showed you an image from it was Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and it was a sunken relief piece where the two of them are sitting on a throne, and there's a child in one of their laps, and there's also a lot of text. And so the pairing of artwork with text is not new to the modern age, but graphic design really doesn't exist until we get to the 19th century, because like illustration, it kind of requires mass publication, requires things that can be reproduced at a large scale to really make sense as a field. So anyway, here we have an example in the 19th century of a studio artist doing a certain amount of work as a graphic designer, doing hand lettering, and kind of organizing a poster campaign for different businesses. And so, but I want to really kind of focus on the 20th century when we get to the Bauhaus and similar kind of movements, where we really see the idea of a graphic designer as a profession kind of taking off. Excuse me, I'm still recovering from that cold. And here we have one is a Russian Suprematist example by Suzuki, who is both a Suprematist studio artist as well as a working graphic designer, but he brought those same kind of thinking to both fields. And here we have a graphic design piece, a cover for a publication by the Bauhaus. Walter Gropius is actually an architect, but here is doing his hand at some graphic design work. And here are some examples of Swiss school graphic design that are strongly influenced by that earlier period of the 20th century. And I will end the first part there.